I'll always keep you safe. Maybe we should let the darkness consume us. Bun.
It has been a wild 4 years for Learning with Pibby, going from a viral sensation to what seemed to be Adult Swim's next big hit to a project that's dead in the water. Although Pibby will remain as another cool idea that deserved to see the light of day, we're not completely in the dark when it comes to the story and lore of this series, as creator Dodge Greenley has shared plenty of concept art that we're going to break down in this video, alongside a recent update that I can only describe as a huge bummer. From Pibby's corrupted hand to the tragic demise of Courage the Cowardly Dog, let's unpack what would have been the dark storyline and world building of Learning with Pibby. And I also want to answer the question, would Pibby have actually worked as a full television series? To figure out if Pibby would have been a game-changing celebration of all things Cartoon Network or glorified fanfiction, let's take a look at the various concept art released throughout the years, alongside other material like a full 12-minute animatic that surfaced online last summer. Usually I want to avoid covering leaked material like this, but since we know the show's dead and Warner never took down this animatic from YouTube, I figured, why not? This is very clearly meant to be the first episode of the show, and it has a pretty straightforward premise. Pibby, as a parody of the average preschool cartoon, namely Dora, has an episode of her show derailed by the darkness, a mysterious entity that corrupts everything it touches, devastating environments, and transforming beloved television characters into zombie-like beings hell-bent on spreading the corruption across entertainment as we know it. We see Pibby and Bun Bun try to outrun the darkness throughout the episode as their friends fall victim to its madness. Pibby tries to keep composure, only to spiral as things go from bad to worse, which is reflected in her appearance becoming more disheveled throughout the pilot. But there's one major aspect to the darkness present in this pilot that wasn't in the trailer. The darkness is internet brain rot. That's not even a joke. Its face shifts between various emojis, and those assimilated into the darkness start to say phrases like, "It's lit fam," and "Let's go viral," with the darkness surrounded by a barrier of hashtags and memes. While trying to evade the darkness, Bun Bun tragically got infected as if he were bit by a zombie. This gives a glimpse into the horrifying stages of corruption, starting off with an urge to spout the language of brain rot and encouraging those around the infected to surrender themselves to the darkness. As it progresses, the infected experience physical changes as their form cycles between different memes and facial features, such as their eyes getting obscured by emojis, their body glitching the entire time as their condition only gets worse. Thankfully, not all hope is lost for those infected by the darkness, as embracing their identity seems to combat corruption. Case in point, indulging in the preschool elements of the Learning with Pibby show by singing their routine goodbye song temporarily heals Bun Bun. But before they can sign out, the darkness consumes Pibby's world whole, leaving her as the sole survivor as she's saved by the credits. As if things weren't traumatic enough, she begins to realize that her view of the world was a lot more naive than she could have ever expected, as she's made aware of Cartoon Network's existence before stumbling into another show, an action cartoon named Captain Platinum. In what I can only assume would be the second episode, she'd befriend Beta Boy, sidekick to Captain Platinum. Judging by the mock trailer, this world would have also fell victim to the darkness, with Beta Boy losing all of his comrades just like Pibby. Now, I gotta be honest, the whole darkness being a brain rot thing really threw me off. And when this first made the rounds online, a lot of people were suddenly relieved that Pibby wasn't going anywhere, because frankly, they thought it sounded cringe. A lot of people aren't big on blatant internet references in entertainment unless it's done really well, or if people just already like the cartoon and give it a pass. And Pibby is already a flavor of veggie that turns a lot of people off, given the whole corrupted childhood characters gimmick, so the memes just feel like a step too far. Personally, I like the dark crossover gimmick. I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan, and I ate up the last time we had a major Cartoon Network crossover with a darker tone, Fusion Fall. So it should be no surprise that this is right up my alley. The memes really aren't though, and it causes the whole thing to leave a weird taste in my mouth. However, I wanted to see how other viewers felt about the inclusion of memes in brain rot culture, and I actually stumbled upon a pretty good interpretation of the darkness that's worth sharing straight from the comments section of this animatic. Watching this made me realize the internet really does force you to be trendy. The glitch must be a metaphor for people conforming and becoming a hollowed out zombie version of themselves. It could also just be a metaphor of how the internet is killing and changing the way cartoons are made now. This didn't completely sway me, but it did make me appreciate what Dodge Greenley was likely going for. The internet has completely changed the way cartoons are made and engaged with. The internet influences a lot of decisions made in television, and it's a contributing factor to why people may feel that the animation landscape feels hollow. And it tracks with how they fight the darkness with singing their goodbye song. In that moment, they're not focused on being trendy to appease a wider crowd, they're focused on being a preschool show, on being themselves. Really makes me wonder how they would have handled combating the darkness in other shows with different demographics and in different genres. Suffice to say, there's a lot of potential here. We could have had a show that paid homage to all sorts of animated series, championing their strengths and highlighting the ways where their artistic integrity is being threatened. Still, I can't say this pilot was a smash hit for me. I honestly think we didn't need to spend 12 whole minutes in Pibby's world. I think it would have been far more interesting to spend the pilot in Captain Platinum. In its current form, there are some good ideas and decent jokes, but it kinda drags given that we know how everything turns out for this world, and it doesn't really give off the vibe of an Adult Swim show. Adults need to know pretty quickly if the cartoon they're watching is meeting them on their level. It's a big reason why so many adult animated series are quick to get vulgar, even if that ironically attracts a bunch of edgy kids who want to feel mature, like me in middle school. At the very end of the pilot, we see that Pibby's hand caught a little bit of the infection, and it appears she would have either built an immunity to the darkness or possessed the mental fortitude to overpower it, as two pieces of concept art feature Pibby's corrupted arm. The same arm that's bandaged in certain parts of the trailer. Corruption really does seem to function like a zombie bite, as Pibby tries to hide hers for as long as possible until it gets out of control, forcing her to tame it. According to Dodge, this would have allowed Pibby to bend the rules and affect the cartoon worlds on a meta level. If she interacts with the progress bar of a YouTube video, it could distort time itself. It'd be cool if she had to rewind time to save a fan favorite character from biting the dust. Imagine if she was able to break an opponent down from a fully animated character to a mere storyboard. Maybe she'd be able to harness the power of the darkness to uncorrupt characters. I could definitely see the corrupted arm getting introduced halfway through season 1 and sticking with Pibby until the end of the series when these worlds are finally restored to their former glory. I really dig the idea of Pibby's corrupted arm. Very much reminds me of stuff like Princess Mononoke or Tears of the Kingdom. On the topic of corruption, we also have concept art of Yosemite Sam and Huckleberry Hound going through the stages of corruption, albeit with different results. For Yosemite Sam, at first, his guns evolve and he takes on a more sinister demeanor, but then there are iterations where his physical form begins to change. He grows multiple eyes, his beards morph into glitchy appendages, and in some pieces, his arms merge with the guns, brandishing more than what he had before the transformation. Greenley says he was inspired by the Gun Double arc in Chainsaw Man while creating these, and it definitely shows. I think it looks sick, but I know not everyone will feel the same way about it. Speaking of Chainsaw Man, just like how aiming for the head is the best way to kill a devil, beheading a corrupted cartoon character seems to be the solution to ending their rampage and putting them out of their misery, turning their lifeless bodies back to normal in the process. Though I imagine Pibby would have contemplated her actions and find herself torn on if she should be killing these characters before they could do more harm, or if she should be finding a way to save them. The Huckleberry Hound art shows how the series could have experimented with mixed media. Pibby splashing realistically rendered paint thinner on a corrupted Huckleberry, dripping the paint from his cells. Very Gumball-esque, and it has me thinking the show could have incorporated live action and CGI elements. Love to see it. Even obscure cartoons could have been on the table for Pibby, as Greenley recently shared art where Pibby would bash her way through an army of Smorks. They're like aquatic knockoffs of the Smurfs, I guess? Wild. Imagine a fight scene where Pibby has a brawl with all the Scooby-Doo clones. That would have been peak TV. But this brings us to the most controversial piece of concept art, and something that would have been a pretty dark storyline in the show. The tragic death of Courage the Cowardly Dog, as he would have been slain by none other than Bun Bun. Greenley wrote on Instagram, "I had a whole storyline of Courage the Cowardly Dog's tragic death. I'm not sure if we would have gotten the rights and approvals to treat John R. Dilworth's character so brutally, but a boy can dream." Yeah, I don't know about this one, big guy. This concept art really says it all when it comes to the divisive nature of Pibby. While I enjoy the idea of recognizable cartoon characters either succumbing to the darkness or doing their best to combat it, I think a line has to be drawn when it comes to choosing characters to put on the chopping block. For example, Eddie or Uncle Grandpa getting sliced and diced is just funny. One's a scam artist who's prone to being a dick, love you Eddie, and the other is a goober who'd be fine the next morning. This apocalypse would just be another Tuesday for Uncle Grandpa. But not only is Courage a super cute dog, and audiences audiences hate seeing a dog get done dirty. He's also the protector of his family. The entire series is built around keeping Muriel and Eustace safe against some pretty wicked forces of evil. To see him endure all of that mayhem in his series just to get brutally murked in someone else's story would hurt, and not in a good way. I'd wager a lot of people who found the crossover aspect of Pibby appealing because it's the characters they grew up with would be pissed at this development. Hell, how would Dilworth himself feel about his magnum opus being treated this way? Now, to be fair to Greenley, he did say this was just an idea that he's not even sure would have happened, as there's an entire legal process involved. This one piece of art shouldn't be the show's legacy when it was never a shoo-in for the final product. And I do see a version of the story where Courage's death is well executed and done with a lot of care. Courage being a symbol of hope in the story just as he is in his own show. His death would be the loss of hope, and thus a turning point in the story where Pibby hits a new low before picking herself up from the ground. The memory of Courage serving as a reminder of hope, and of course, courageousness. Although he's cowardly, he always musters up the strength to face danger, and I'm sure his death may have been a sacrifice of sorts. It really does boil down to the execution, which affirms to me that Pibby would have been an acquired taste. The show definitely would have had a dedicated audience of people who vibe with what it's going for, while others would have just wrote it off as cringe. Many such cases, really. Unfortunately, we can't be certain what the final show would have been like thanks to the powers that be, and so all we can do is give Pibby the farewell she deserves and lay her to rest. We are gathered here today to mourn the loss of an internet icon. Pibby, she was special. I mean, nearly 40 million views, Friday Night Funkin' mods, and brain rot content farms without so much as a first episode? Outstanding. And my mom said I was an overachiever.
It's not funny. They're just laughing because he's a pastor.
You know, he's capitalizing on these people's sorrow. It's bullshit.
But alas, she wasn't long for this world. Today she joins her brethren in the graveyard of rejected cartoons. Now, I have a few words from the creator that I like to read. Taken from his Instagram, he didn't write in. In 2019, I pitched a show idea about a cute preschool character facing the apocalypse, and through 2020, I worked on her story in a real-world apocalypse. I wish I could say developing her story was a delight, but honestly, it was like being punched in the soul every week. When we released the trailer for Learning with Pibby in 2021, it seemed like all my hard work was worth it. Millions of people watched the video and fell in love with Pibby, and it seemed like she was destined to get a full TV show. I was told it was unprecedented. They had hoped for at best 1 million views, and she rocketed past 10 million in the first week. People became fans from a 2.5-minute video, and the fans were, and still are, amazing, making so much beautiful art and sending the kindest messages any artist could ever hope for. But Pibby still wasn't picked up to be a full show, so the soul punching continued. We kept working, and when we finally pushed through, we took Pibby out to sell the show, and we pitched it the second week of the writer's strike. Tens of millions of views, 3 awards, but no one wanted original content. In the following years, I fell into a deep depression. Every time someone asked me about Pibby, every comment, every message pains me so deeply. I wish I could make more. I wish she could have her whole story. It's hard to talk about this time, but I'm properly medicated and therapized, so I'm trying to turn this corner and move on. I have a few pieces of art for Pibby that I'd still like to share with the world, but this is the end of her story for me. Love, Dodge. Well, I know this funeral is for Pibby, but I think I just died a little inside. While this is a tough read, it's also a harsh reality that many creatives in the animation industry face. Countless people have dedicated months, if not years of their lives developing and pitching series to different networks or streaming services, only for nothing to come of it. For every cartoon that made it onto your television screen, there are more that didn't get to cross that finish line for one reason or another. However, Pibby is one of the most confusing rejections we've seen in television history. It absolutely feels like Adult Swim strung along both Dodge and the audience at large. It'd be one thing if the fake trailer came out, it got the views, and Adult Swim just wasn't feeling it and shot down the show then and there. But they leaned into it pretty heavily with the 2022 April Fool's stunt where Pibby was wandering in and out of shows for a couple of hours. They tricked me into watching a full episode of Bird Girl. I'm still mad about it. You could dismiss it as a fun bit for the holiday, but there's a precedent of Adult Swim having a stunt evolve into something bigger. We saw it in 2012 with Toonami returning to the airways for the first time in years. That didn't have nearly as much attention as Pibby, Pibby, but the block returned full-time the month after this prank and has been broadcast every Saturday since, outliving the original Cartoon Network run. They also changed their bio across all social media accounts to "Let the Darkness Consume You," a direct reference to Pibby, keeping it like this for like a whole year or two after April Fool's, and they put up billboards to coincide with this stunt in both LA and Atlanta, with Pibby and Bun Bun in front of a corrupted email that's titled New Adult Swim, and then something that starts with a G, but we can't read it fully. It's hard to look at them putting this much effort into something and not assume it's already been given the green light. Now, Dodge revealed that they shot Pibby around to other places, but no one wanted to take a risk on original content, even if it already has a promising audience consisting of millions of people. And while it is true that a lot of studios and streaming services are favoring reboots and continuations of popular IP, I'm not fully convinced that's the only reason it got rejected. A big thing a lot of people have pointed out is that the main appeal of Pibby is the crossover element. Again, it's basically Kingdom Hearts with Cartoon Network characters, which on its own is feasible. We've seen crossover shows like Chibiverse come to fruition on Disney Channel, but Pibby's meant to be this super dark and edgy adult animated series on Adult Swim, which is considered a separate channel from Cartoon Network despite being on the same channel, or at least it used to be. As someone who has Hulu Live, Adult Swim and Cartoon Network are on two entirely separate feeds. If you try to watch Cartoon Network while Adult Swim's airing and vice versa, you'll get nothing but a void. Using kid-friendly characters on an adult-oriented network has become a forgotten practice on Adult Swim, unless it's a parody like a Robot Chicken sketch. A one-off short is one thing, but a full show is a whole nother story. It's risky, and I'm sure a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo is involved as well. It's been made apparent through Checkered Past that if Adult Swim wants to air old Cartoon Network shows, then those shows can only air on Adult Swim going forward. A great example is Samurai Jack. Ever since season 5 debuted on Toonami, it's been considered an Adult Swim show. Using all these characters already sounds complicated, but for something like Pibby where they're at risk of getting brutally murdered, you have to question if it's even worth it. And that's why I don't think other platforms wanted it. It's asking them to pick up a show where they probably have to license a bunch of Cartoon Network characters they don't own for a story that may or may not land. I really adore the idea of Pibby and what it's tried to deliver as someone who grew up with Cartoon Network as their favorite channel, but I definitely understand why it may not have been worth the trouble. All in all, I do hope Mr. Greenley continues to feel better and move on from a rather bleak chapter in his life. Pibby absolutely deserved better, and I look forward to the day where I do get to check out a brand new cartoon with his name on it. And with all that said, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let's get a dialogue going in the comments. Shout out to Jakey Bones for the heart-wrenching thumbnail, and if you want to stay in the loop of all things animation, please subscribe to the Roundtable with notifications on, and give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at OstricVox. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Peace! Ooh, I think YouTube wants you to click on one of these videos. They seem to think you'll really like them.